All right. Welcome back to another episode of Operation Warp Drive, and a special shout out to our loyal fans who haven't missed one yet. We see you. Today, we're honored to have Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Naughton, a U.S. Army officer, military historian, and a recipient of the prestigious General Douglas MacArthur Leadership Award. Originally from Hawaii, Lieutenant Colonel Naughton brings a remarkable blend of field experience, scholarship, and public service to our conversation. Currently teaching at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, he's served in a range of unique leadership roles, from interagency fellowships at Washington, D.C., to legislative liaison work with the U.S. Senate, and as a senior leadership fellow at West Point. He's also a published historian with works appearing in Military Review, Joint Force Quarterly, Naval History Magazine, and many others. His first book, Born from War, I've got it here. I'm about halfway through. I don't know if you can see my note card in there, so I'm working my way through it. Was released in April of 2025 this year. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us today, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much for the invite. Really looking forward to the conversation and honored to be a part of the 36ID Arrowheads initiative with Operation Warp Drive, and just looking forward to it. So thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for that intro, Matt. And Patrick, this is good. This is going to be great stuff, man. I was reading over your bio in advance of this, and I mean, there's so many ways this conversation can go. You are truly a Renaissance man. So the other members of the writing roundtable were kind of operating a skeleton crew today. Whenever we pull Matt Cox out from behind the camera, he's like our editor in chief. And so whenever we pull him out from behind the camera, we are tapped out and doing all kinds of different operations. So we have today with us Jared Krause. He is our research and development guy. He can kind of resonate with some of the stuff you guys are talking about with artificial intelligence. And then, of course, you've met Matt already. And then we are also pleased to introduce Mariah Gagnon. She's our legal expert and our resident counselor. So any kind of legal requirements we throw her way, she'll do it for us. So
awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to kick it off. Man, I don't know where to start, but you're probably familiar. I know Matt told you a little bit about Operation Warp Drive.
Yes, sir.
It's a writing initiative. We want to, kind of get people's experience about how we write and get things done. I was impressed with the book that you pushed out, Born from War. You want to share some insights about how maybe sounds like you been writing for a while, and then all of a sudden you had this idea for a book, and then you jumped on it, and then next thing you know, you're a published author for a book. So that's pretty amazing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, no, I started writing really heavily in 2017. And so if anyone had read my first work, you would be just as appalled by it as I am right now. But started in 2017 writing, especially for military journals. And, I quickly learned from my very first article in Military Review that sharing your experience, writing about knowledge that you've gained through different, units or experiences, deployments, et cetera, and so on, that when you wrote this and when you published it in these venues, other people were actually reading it. So, from my first article, all kinds of senior leaders reached out, just people, my peers, subordinates, people I hadn't heard from in years, taking a picture of the magazine and showing it to me saying, hey, wow, I saw your article.
Yeah.
So I really got the bug after that. And I just kept writing and writing and writing. And so, for everybody out there who thinks that their work is not having an impact on the profession, I would really, people who are thinking about writing but saying, no one's going to read it, it doesn't really matter, it's not going to make an impact, I would really encourage them to put themselves out there, because it does make an impact. People are reading it, people are learning from mistakes or experiences, TTPs that you had, and then applying it within their formations. So definitely a huge plug for that. But from that first article, I'm up to 16 or 17 peer-reviewed articles now, and then the book, like you mentioned, sir. And the peer-reviewed articles are all military related, kind of writing in my official capacity, whereas the book is my personal civilian capacity that I wrote that, sir.
Yeah, that's your pleasure writing, right?
Right. Yeah. Hoping to make some money off of it, but it hasn't happened yet. But we'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about an important part too in sharing that experience. It's that validation that you get. right? And for those aspiring writers out there, that's, I think maybe that's part of the fear, maybe fear of rejection. But on that same spectrum is that win that you feel, that windfall that you feel when you get that validation, especially like you referenced, like a senior leader validation, right? I mean, that's critical to put some wind behind your sails.
No, absolutely, sir. And and when you're writing and you're submitting for publication and so on, I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to have thick skin sometimes. Some of my earlier work, I mean, one of the comments I got back from an editor was, at best, this is a bad hopper. And so, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt and just
Yeah.
just continue to hone your craft. And you get that through, like you do through anything, reps and sets, like you do in training, through experience. And then you're absolutely right. So right now I have an article with Joint Force Quarterly, which is now part of the readings in War College.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so when I was working in the Senate, I'd have GOs come through and see my name, and they'd be like, "Oh, wait a minute, yeah, I read your article. Was part of the reading for the on the War College." So yeah,
Yeah.
anybody out there, especially those who are most recent experiences, whether it's a border mission and things like that. There's tons of TTPs that we are learning from that we can apply to the bigger army. So I really encourage, especially soldiers from the 36 ID and the types of things that you all are doing, to get those stories out there and get them in the public realm so people can learn from them.
Yeah. Hey, that's, yeah, absolutely 100%. And you brought up the border mission. Jared and I are both on the border mission. I think
Mhm.
it's kind of like our part-time hobby, I think. I mean, no. But we talk a lot about different things that we want to share from the border mission. There's a lot of technology that we're trying to integrate off the border mission, and it has applications. And it seems like it connects to everything, right? I talked to General Bowen, who is the commanding general for the 36th Infantry Division, and he has this phrase he likes to use. We have to figure out how to be leaders of innovation
Yeah.
and not just consumers of innovation. And
Mhm.
so I know Jared's working on, Patrick, you wrote an article on artificial intelligence. Jared's working on an article for artificial intelligence. Your article is more focused on like, hey, I'm a teacher. These are some indicators that kind of shows me that a paper was written from AI.
Mhm.
Jared's approach, well, I don't want to steal your thunder. Jared, what's your approach about prompts? Yeah, we'll go into
Well,
that a little bit and let's share that.
no, it was good, right? Going through your paper, Sarah, that right, the machines in the margin, kind of
Mhm.
those key indicators of what makes something AI. How can you tell about AI? Mine is right a little bit different, right? Where yeah, right, we need to make sure we have our critical thinking. We have this, but how do we build this AI writing as that, adopting that into our workflow to make it more
Mhm.
efficient? To where we can put in like, hey, we got to get right, say an op board road out, right? We got to get this frag order, we got to get it now. How do we validate it through all these different criterias without having your staff work until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to hurry up and get it pumped
Mhm.
out? And putting these, these left and right barriers on those AI prompts, kind
Mhm.
of like that prompt engineering side of the house, where you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, right, here's what we need, this is what we have, go ahead and do the bulk of this work on it because it's more in that, that operational writing of doing the frag ords, op boards things instead of more of that
Mhm.
professional, academia
Yep.
writing. Hey, write me a paper. Let's have some original thought and ideas on it.
Mhm. No, you're spot on, sir. You're absolutely right of the way the direction that the military needs to take AI. Here in the college, we're really trying to experiment with ways that a staff can use AI to get after exactly everything that you just said. Our biggest fear here is that, say we put an American division that's using AI a little bit, playing around with it against a peer competitor or whatever, that's fully leveraging AI throughout all echelons of that division. I mean, they will be able to get inside of our decision space so quickly. They will be able to maneuver forces, whatever, anticipate whatever we think we're going to do
Mm-hmm.
much faster than we can. So that's really the fear that we have, is that we're going to have this American division that's not fully leveraging all the capabilities of AI, facing one that is absolutely has it integrated throughout all echelons of their formations. And so there's that practical piece that, Sarn, you just alluded to, of being able to pump out products faster, more efficiently. And there's also another piece to that is, as we're able to fully leverage that within our headquarter elements, we'll be able to drop the troops that are within those echelons as well. So just look at all the echelons of the 36 ID. If you could remove 10 soldiers, 10 people who are building slides, building Excel spreadsheets, things like that, from each echelon, that'd be 50, 60 soldiers that you could put, again, behind the gun, behind a rifle on patrol and things like that. So, yeah, there's many benefits, I think, that come with AI. There's some dangers as well, but what you just articulated, I think, is exactly what the Army needs to do as we're looking at AI.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Hey, it looks like Craig Burrell has joined us too. Hey, welcome, Craig. Craig's the newest member of Riding Roundtable, Patrick.
Oh,
Patrick,
welcome,
that's
sir.
Craig. Craig, you're joining us from Washington, right?
Yes, I am. It's a nice, rainy, cool day here. No sunshine anywhere.
Nice. Yeah, perfect. So, hey, Craig, we're just talking about AI. Patrick wrote an article on AI talking about these various aspects of AI when you're looking at papers and how you could see that it's AI driven or AI produced. Jared's talking about engineering prompts and how we can use these prompts to kind of get after staff work. I guess I look at both these approaches and I say, undoubtedly, you have to have a human in the loop, right?
Yep.
And Patrick, you connected the dots. You know, this will allow us to maybe have smaller headquarters in the future, but we still have to have that human in the loop, that critical component. And as we train our AIs, maybe, we look at that list you produce and we start saying, okay, there's where's evidence of the human in the loop? That's what we really want to look for, right?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, sir. There's definitely huge dangers of taking that human out of the loop. As you play around with AI, I have my students play around with it. I play around with it as well as an instructor. It'll produce a decent product, but you're absolutely right. You can input the science of it. So, hey, how many rounds are we going to burn through if in this type of fight, et cetera, things like that. How much fuel are we going to consume? And it'll give you a pretty good product, but you absolutely have to go behind, check it, insert that art into it behind. And it takes a human being, with those years of experience that they've had wearing their uniform, serving in different formations, to then apply that art to it. So AI is, despite what the news is saying and so on, AI, in my opinion, is nowhere near just fighting a war all by itself without a human element inserted into it. And I think there's a danger of removing that element, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, switching gears a little bit for you. So, when you worked on your different papers, you said you had 16 to 17 peer review papers, and then you talk about your book that you wrote, Born from War. The aspiring writers out there, they're kind of, it ranges on the spectrum. There's some that, hey, I want to do some creative writing. I like to do fictional works. I want to do a short story. There's some that are looking to do what you did with your peer reviews. Hey, I want to get this out there. I want recognition. I want to contribute to the profession of arms. And there's probably like a happy medium in between the middle, which is, maybe not so in depth of as a peer review article, but it's enough to get the dialogue starting in the right direction so that the profession can grow. And it seems to me, based on your conversation so far, you've kind of had articles on all three parts of the kind of spectrum, right?
Yep.
Where you kind of have that personal thing that you really enjoy, maybe a little bit fictional, maybe dampering, doing the historical stuff. Maybe you have some of that stuff that's kind of a shallow dive into the profession, and then you have that deep dive. Do you have any tips for the writers out there? Like, hey, this is how you distinguish between the three. These are what's an effective tip for one versus the other. And maybe you can share your experience of how, you enjoy one over the other for those types of writing.
Sure. So yeah, no, great question, sir. So, first, for anybody who's an aspiring writer, like anything in life, to get good at it, you have to do it. There's no other way around it. I mean, you can use AI, but even AI, you just plug in a prompt. Hey, write me an article about, I don't know, the ammunition supply rate and let's go, or something like that. It's going to produce this very flowery article that when you read it as a human, it really doesn't resonate with you at all. It sounds very much like a machine wrote it. I mean, it's really obvious. So aspiring writers, you've got to do it. Definitely leverage AI to help with outlines, research, things like that. But there's all kinds of ways to kind of hone your skill. There's like little local writing groups that you can join. You can also, through Facebook, other social media platforms. I mean, there's all kinds of groups out there right now. If you go to Reddit, There's all kinds of chat rooms in there that are specific to whatever your interest is. So maybe you like World War II, maybe you want to write about the field artillery in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's all kind of individual little chat rooms in there that you can jump in. You can write. If you don't want to write a full article, like you said, you just want to write something, write a couple paragraphs in that Reddit room and ask people to give feedback on it. And then you can kind of have back and forths there. So that's a way to kind of hone your skill and learn. But I will say for any type of writing, whether you're doing academic, you're doing, PME, or whether you're writing for yourself or for money, is the one piece of advice that kind of goes through all of them is that I would say that try to insert, human emotion into it as much as you can. Academic writing tends to be kind of really dry, as does PME writing, but there's ways to insert like feelings, emotions, senses, sights, smells, things like that into that writing so that it draws your reader in a little bit more. So if you're writing about Washington, D.C., say, writing about the Senate, you don't want to just say, and then I went to the U.S. Senate and then I did this. You can insert something about the grand marble buildings that surrounded you as you walked into the U.S. Senate. Just that 1-2 sentence there draws that reader into it right away. So that's kind of the one tip I have for everybody who, regardless of what type of product you're trying to produce, is don't forget to, insert maybe some sights, some smells, some thoughts, some emotions. Just 1 or 2 words into that writing really helps bring it to life rather than just writing it very dry and academic and so on, if that makes sense.
If I may, I just want to chime in. I couldn't agree with Patrick more. You're absolutely right. I tell you, having read a lot, I am a big fan of interesting writing.
Yeah.
And one of the things you can tell with AI, it just doesn't make it interesting.
It doesn't. Right.
And I think one of my most favorite books, and I think it's interesting that people like him or hate him, is Anti-Fragile, and the way Talib writes, because he writes very kind of, he'll evoke emotion in people, and whether you agree with his premise or not, you'll remember him.
Yep. Yes, sir.
And so when I coach writers around here, we're trying to do some articles and stuff. I would coach them that, hey, be candid, be upfront, make a stand. You want people to either agree or disagree with you. Invoke emotion, make it interesting. Otherwise, one of my criticisms of when I read like military review articles, they're just snoozers. And and they're just, I lose interest within minutes, and I find myself just scanning, looking for the interesting part. And I usually have to get down to page 2 before I find something interesting, because the first page is just all fluff,
right?
And using military jargon. So yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. In fact, we're so information saturated nowadays. Attention is the scarce resource.
Yes, sir.
It's not information. So the person who can maintain attention has power. So yeah, I agree with you. Be interesting. Be bold. I guess that's the best word. Be a bold writer.
Right. No, that's absolutely, sir. And it shouldn't be the focus of your article, obviously, but it should be in there, like you said, to set it apart from the other articles, to make it more interesting, to make it so that they actually remember what I'm trying to convey. Yeah, great comment, sir.
Yeah, that's incredible. So like I mentioned before, Mariah is our resident counselor. So I'm sure she's never read any snoozers out there. And she's reading all those 15-6s. So
I feel like when I don't read a snoozer, it's like, when is it not a snoozer?
Yeah. But we've had this conversation before, right, Mariah? Like where, it's funny how we pick 15-6 investigators. The ones that are really good at writing, you save for your hardest cases, and the ones that are like not that good at writing, they get the cases that, like, okay, they can handle this. So I mean,
absolutely.
If you don't, all those aspiring writers, I know we got a lot of lieutenants that watch this. If you're tired of getting those 15-6 investigations, do a good job writing, and manage that relationship with the JAG, and you'll find yourself not getting so many.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Hey, can you tell us a little bit about Born for More, your book that you published recently, Patrick?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my dad, he's a Vietnam veteran. 82nd, he was an infantry officer, 82nd Airborne for half his tour, and then an ARVN advisor for the second half of his tour. So, he only did Vietnam. He did 2 years. He did 1 year in Vietnam and then 1 year at Fort Benning teaching after that. But just that limited experience that he had in the Army had this huge influence on me growing up, which then influenced me to then join the Army and then obviously serve in my own war, like most of us have done here. So really, the book, about 4.5 years ago, we found, he's still alive, but we found all these letters that he wrote home from Vietnam, this diary that he kept, and all this stuff. And it was just, it was probably like a stack, like this big of stuff. And so I got this idea of, why don't I research his year at war and then compare it to a year that I did in Iraq. And that's basically what the book is about. So I researched, and I found a bunch of people that he served with in Vietnam. I interviewed them, and I basically talk about how his experience in Vietnam influenced me to join, and then it goes back and forth between our two wars and the similarities and differences from the tactical level that we experienced to the operational, all the way to the strategic level, about how we fought these different conflicts, GWAT and Vietnam. Found like a number of similarities and lessons that we could have applied in Iraq and Afghanistan, which we had learned in Vietnam but forgot about or overlooked when we went into GWAT. And so that's basically what the book's about. And so it's kind of like everything I just talked about. It has history, it has the dry portions of the history, but it also has that human experience on that human level of both of our experiences, of a year at war. So it sounds like Matt has read half of it. So hopefully it's helping him sleep at night whenever he needs to. But that's basically what the book's about, sir.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So off observations, you mentioned letters and diaries that your father wrote, and I'm currently reading audio book. I call it reading because I'm listening to it. I drove so much on the border; it's like 5 or 6 hours between locations many times. But it's called Fate of the Day. It's the second book in the trilogy of the American Revolution trilogy by Rick Atkinson.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And yeah, I mean, I love his writing style, and I think it goes back to what you talked about before, and what Craig talked about, capturing attention, weaving in emotion. Letters and diaries are very personal, right? And when you're doing research and you're trying to get a historical approach to something, and you need primary sources, and you have to go and you have to find something that validates what you believe as a historian, what you believe as an observer. Because in many ways, when you're writing these papers and you're making statements, those are observations that that are based on fact. And having those letters and diaries, I mean, it really gets after that emotional part, right?
Yes, sir.
Gets after the sights and the sounds and the smells. I'm sure in some of your father's letters he talked about how terrible the food was, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one observation I thought was really incredible that people can take away from that. I think another is the power of analogy, right? You compare two different wars, right? And I'll open it up to the group here, but we do this all the time. The power of analogy. That's when if you're a staff writer, if you can explain something to your boss in a recommendation with the power of analogy, you make incredible strides. So I'm gonna dangle that out there for the writing roundtable to bite on. So we'll see who bites first.
Maybe I will, sir. I feel like you'd be a good lawyer if you can do the analogizing and differentiating. That's like basically what we do all the time. So yeah, I feel like that is a huge important skill for young officers, especially not only JAGs, other officers, because you can say, how are we going to do things different, or how are we going to do the things same? How are we going to be successful? How are we going to overcome obstacles? So I do feel like that is an important skill, and people should hone. And just it does take the analyzing piece. Like, you look at this A situation, B, what's the same, what's different. AI is not going to do that, and so it's important for us to hone those writing skills, because they go beyond writing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And AI can help you get started. That's really the beauty of AI. You can plug something in and say, "Hey, what is this similar to?" And it'll give you certain ideas, and then you can then take it from there and apply that art over it. So yeah, great comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, sir. I'll make a comment on your. Go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say I'll let you with your comments, or not. We'll switch topics.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say comment you made, sir, about the letters and diaries. There's a lot of people today who say that historians in the future are going to be challenged because of this lack of letters and diary writing that we do today. I kind of push back on that a little bit because, historians in the future, especially let's say they're looking at Iraq and Afghanistan. So the military history detachments, they have gathered all these emails and all these orders and all this stuff from across those theaters. And right now they are trying to figure out a way to make that stuff accessible, once it gets declassified, obviously, and make it so that it's accessible so that we can easy access it. Because right now it's just like raw data in these emails and these PST files and things like that. So whenever they do level all that out, I mean, historians digging through those emails are going to be able to get into the inside the mind of the commander when they're making those decisions in Afghanistan to levels that have never been achievable before. And then the second thing is, with social media, so all these influential, whether they're political, military, influencers, whatever, they are posting things on a daily basis, trying to influence the informational, environment. And so that stuff's going to be forever accessible to historians in the future. And so they're going to be able to leverage all of that. It's almost going to be too much information, I think. And it serves the same purpose as these letters and diaries. So I kind of push back on people who think that historians are going to struggle in the future with, trying to get into the minds of decision makers and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you, man. I'm a big fan of the social media, especially the memes and the reels. I mean, I struggle with being a dad of teenagers that no one wants to watch my reels. I probably send 100 reels a day to my kids, and they all they all go unviewed. So, but right on. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I would ask the future historians listening to stay away from Skype calls circa 2010 coming out of Iraq. That would be appreciated. Not relevant at all.
Skip over it. Yeah.
Not relevant to what's going on at all. Yeah. So you've obviously you're a big history buff, as we saw from your book. So looking ahead, what do you think one aspect of military history or leadership you think the Army's not talking about today, or where the Army, should be looking to go towards as we move into LSCO?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and I think the Army's doing actually a pretty good job at this. So Vietnam, we kind of, in PME, if you think back to all your PMEs when you had military history, Vietnam was kind of skipped over. We kind of talked about, World War II. Obviously, we kind of skipped over Vietnam, and then we into GWAT, and I don't think we really mined Vietnam for the lessons that we could have applied into GWAT. So I think the Army is actually doing a really good job today, with Army University Press. So I'm an editor with Army University Press on the side, and there's all kinds of LSCO stuff that we are getting after from every warfighting function you can think of that we're publishing. There's all kind of videos. If you've never looked at Army University Press videos, highly suggest you go to their YouTube site. All kinds of really good stuff, lessons learned that we can apply into the future, especially as we're looking at China. All this island hopping, and there's a big misunderstanding of what exactly island hopping was. And so we're really trying to, explain what that actually was. And so there's lessons to be learned from MacArthur, drive across the Pacific, going all the way back to the industrial base. I mean, so in my opinion, I think the Army is actually doing a really good job trying to capture those lessons, trying to get them out to the force and trying to get them to read it. So the Harding Project, obviously that's what generated, Operation Warp Speed. So across the Army, especially 36 ID now, you guys are really leaning into it. So I think it's kind of a good news story there.
Yeah, I would agree, sir. I think what's old is new, and it's just the Army's done an excellent job in digging those things out of historical archives and what was previously just in hard copy to make digital, not only for PME but just to put out into the universe for all to consume.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and Craig, I think we've seen some stuff like this. We talked recently at a commanders conference we had with General Bowen, with 36 ID and General James and General Cogswell, and we talked about how we were sharing our experiences from our units, and so I think as we look, we're so quick in the Army. And I see that I experience this with myself because I look at my own experiences with my own unit. We're so quick in the Army to say, hey, that GWAT, hey, get away from GWAT. It's now LSCO. Well, let's talk GWAT. No, stop talking about GWAT. You got to have a clean break. And GWAT's still relevant, right?
It is.
Doing doing shaping operations still relevant? Figuring out how to consolidate gains. That's a big part of shaping operations. Now it's in Lisco. So I guess, what's old is new, like Matt says, but I mean, how do we get after, trying to have that clean break, because we want everyone's so hyper focused on Lisco, but also recognize that there is a place for GWAT in the right conversations.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, sir. Oh, go ahead, sir.
I guess I would offer, if you do a historical look, I counted it up, and I won't try to do it right in front of you. If you actually look at how much of the United States Army's history has been involved in high intense combat. Okay, Revolutionary War, 5 years. I don't know how much that was high intense, or maybe guerrilla warfare. That's arguable. War of 1812. Okay, then maybe 2 years. I don't know. That was episodic. You get into the Civil War. Okay, that's probably Lisco. There's 4 years, maybe. So we're probably at 7 years. Get into World War I. We were actually only in World War I for a year. So now we're at 8 years. We were only in World War II really for 3 years. So now we're, maybe 10, 11 years. Korea War, there's 3. So now we're at 14 years. And really only the first year of that was really Lisco-ish. You get to Vietnam, I guess you could argue what that was, if that was Lisco or coin. So maybe not. I don't know. I guess if you ask a Vietnam War veteran, he'd probably say it was Lisco.
Yeah.
Then you get to, where the Gulf War, 100 days. Anyway, my point of it is, out of the 200 and plus years the U.S. Army's been, only about optimistically 15 years, they should get quantified as Lisco. The rest of the time was involved in small wars, and I would say GWAT type conflict. So I think when you talk about not being so quick to jettison lesson learned, I mean, I'd argue that I just got done reading a great book. If you haven't read it, it's called Comanche by T.R. Fehrenbach. One of the best books I've ever written. And you read about how the Texas Rangers and U.S. military dealt with the Comanches in 60s and 70s. All those lessons learned would have been brilliant if we could have had that institutionally embedded with us went to Afghanistan. So we know how to fight that kind of stuff, but I would actually argue we spend most of our time in conflicts other than Lisco, and very little of our actual fighting has been in a Lisco environment.
No, that's an excellent point, sir. And I'd even push it one further, is that when we look at Lisco, that's just what we focus on, our historical Lisco example. What we forget is that in World War II, in World War I, Civil War, all those conflicts that you named, there is a insurgency piece. It wasn't all just Lisco frontline flot fighting. There's all kinds of other stuff going on in the rear that we're having to secure. You look at the American Civil War, for example, here in Missouri and Kansas. I mean, everything around here was coined. It wasn't large scale combat operations, except for a couple of battles like Mine Creek and Wilson's Creek and stuff like that. So you're absolutely right, sir. So for us to just forget and just throw away our GWAT experiences, our Vietnam experience, yeah, there's definitely a real danger in that.
Yeah, so I guess I would ask the question then: what's the delicate balance for commanders? Colonel Hildebrand can attest, as we were preparing for this past Warfighter 25-5, we that have already wanted to go into it in a Lisco posture, i.e. all the artillery battalions, we had control of them all, and kind of had to manage the entire division fight. So when commanders, prepare for those types of training exercises, how do we balance between, knowing that we've got to maintain some GWAT capability, because inevitably there's going to be a little bit of that, even in a large scale combat operation, in quotes, and the, force on force open field conflict that we saw in the Civil War.
Yeah, so I would suggest for any commander going into any OE, wherever they're going, whatever operational environment they're going to enter into. So we've talked a lot about writing here, sharing TTP, sharing ideas. So there's example GWAT ideas. So I think there's a responsibility on the commander and staff for whatever OE that they're going to enter into, that they've got to read. They've got to read up on that OE. They've got to read the Army, the Joint Force as well, repositories where all these AARs have gone from, past warfighters, past deployments, past whatever. And I think the Army does, across the force, does a really bad job of accessing all that stuff, reading it, and then applying it into their formation as they go into whatever OE that they are going into. So I think that's really, to answer your question, it's really the responsibility of that commander to read, do that research on their own, because no one's going to force feed it to them, and then have their staff do it as well, based on whatever warfighting function that they're leveraging within their staff section. And then come armed with that historical knowledge, with that cultural knowledge, with the information that they need for that OE before they deploy into it.
Yeah,
If I may, I would offer too that we have to come to grips that every fight takes on a life of its own, and get away from what I call the narcotic of nostalgia. And I'm addicted to the narcotic of nostalgia. Trust me, I'm a massive addict. But we have to. I think the best way commanders have to realize is every battle. If you study battles, it's interesting to me, and I just been doing a deep dive in the Shenandoah campaign with Stonewall Jackson. Every battle takes on a life of its own. So every battle kind of has a preparation phase, an initiation phase, and then what I call the adaptation phase, and then some sort of transition. And I think, folks, what you need to do as a commander, what I'm working on our formation is, instead of being resistant that your plan's going to change, or resistant that it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go, you embrace it and name the phase the adaptation phase, and lean forward into it. That of course things are going to go the way, because every fight takes on a life of its own. And if you can build the culture and the habit of your formation not to be slaves to the sync matrix, but instead to embrace the idea that, hey, we're going to a fight, it's going to adapt. Things are going to happen that we don't anticipate. Have a big reserve, have a mentality of flexibility, and create that in the culture. I think you're going to be much more prepared, because human tendency is to be addicted to the narcotic of nostalgia and try to rerun what's worked before.
Yeah, that's a great point, sir. That's the Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face type of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great conversation. I mean, I think we tend to, when we get into MDMP, we tend to overanalyze, and we get stuck in, a paralysis of analysis. And we've got all these branches and sequels of plans that may come along with commanders' decision points. When if we just like Colonel Broyle said, took on an adaptation phase, and we lead a little more into RDMP. That we don't need to do as much work up front, because it ends up just being, I won't say a waste of time, because it's always good to exercise the process. But if we focus more on RDMP, then we're not spending so much time up front with something that is not likely to happen, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, you bring a tear to my eye, Matt. He just went through my AOC class. So proud of you, buddy.
So just connecting all the dots. I mean, we like I said, we have a lot of aspiring writers in the audience. We just went through the gambit of many topics.
Yeah.
Like, if you're looking for a topic to write about, like, that was probably like 5 minutes of gold right there, where you could just skim from the top and just grab something. I mean, I mean, if Colonel Broyles is not going to be writing about those three phases you talked about, the preposition phase, the initiation phase, and adaptation phase, you need to sign a 20-year-old tease, brother. I mean, that's incredible stuff. I think also, to Matt's point, this is the balance, right? And Matt knows this. I am one, I hate meetings, right? And part of the reason why you need meetings is not everyone is at the same speed or level when it comes to staff work. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just that everyone comes to staff with a different experience. Some people may have been in, let's say it's the 3 or the assistant 3. And they may be at the end of their tour, and they're finishing up a 3-year tour. And so they are the experts. They are the experienced hands. And then maybe you have a new S4 that's coming in, and they're just assuming the mantle. They newly promoted. They're taking on the responsibility. And so this goes back to what you talked about, Patrick, which is there's a personal and professional burden on all of us, right? As a profession of arms, that we have to dig. There has to be a spark, a personal interest, right? A contribution internally within ourselves and then with our small circle of people that we do and interact with on a daily basis, and then probably to the larger discourse community across the Army, that we owe that. I mean, if you want to be able to move fast and make decisions to do the RDP instead of the NDMP, you got to have those people on your staff that can do that lift.
No, I agree with you 100%, sir. And, for those maybe listening who, writing's not your thing and you're like, oh, I don't like writing, there's plenty of other ways to contribute, which you just got after, sir. I mean, there's, like I said, the Reddit posts, there's these social media pages, there's joining in the conversations like this that you can just talk about it and give your experience. There's sitting around in the motor pool, that NCO gathering, 10 soldiers together and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's learn from each other from this field problem that we just did and give back to the profession, like you just said, sir. But yeah, absolutely. We all have that responsibility, I think, as American soldiers to further our profession by sharing our knowledge in whatever format that we can, whether it's in writing or doing a blog or just sitting around the motor pool talking. And to get after Colonel Broyle's points, yeah, there's so many things that, I guess, not really issues, but just things that soldiers out there that can write about to better their profession and share that knowledge level. Behind me right now, I've got a bunch of icons, or if you can see it drawn on the board, and that's from yesterday. I had some soldiers come over talking about some sustainment issues, and we talked through it, and we identified like 3 or 4 points where something that they could write about in their papers here at the Command General Staff College, which they could possibly go to the larger force and fix, bigger problems, and so on. So yeah, I think there is a real inherent responsibility on to do that, sir. I think you're right.
Yeah, right on.
Well, I would offer real quick. I love reading papers from majors, captains, sergeant first classes. I get a little tired of colonels like me because they get too wordy and jargony and use all the buzzwords and all that. But I love here because what I like about it is captains and majors and sergeant first classes, and that's when I like Infantry Magazine, they write some good stuff in there, and they're really I've really taken a lot of those great ideas that they've done, and I would offer, if you want to be an agent of change, this is how you do it. Because I cannot tell you, I mean, for example, I read the book one time, Art of Maneuver by Robert Leonard, about 12 years ago, which completely changed everything I did. I read Race to the Slip, same thing. I mean, I can name you articles I've read that the way the 81st is operating right now is because of what someone has written. And so you want to be an agent of change rather than you want to change things, right? Because you can change the Army that way.
No, I agree, sir. And the Harding Project fellows, they're all mid-grade, mid-grade officers and mid-grade NCOs. And there were some people who criticized that, said, they should be senior NCOs and senior officers. But I think it was absolutely the right move to make them captains,
I agree.
staff sergeant first class. I think that was spot on to target that audience.
Goes back to the whole idea of the muddy boots Army, right? The guys that are out there trudging in the field. Those are the experiences we need, because those are the experiences, to your point, Patrick, you made before at the beginning of the show, of like the emotional, right? I mean, who hasn't been at Fort Hood in the middle of the summer and then get a cold front that brought it down to like 60 degrees?
Right.
You're like, where did this come from? Where's my cold weather gear? Like, what is going on here? So that's absolutely critical. Good point, Craig. All right.
Hey,
okay. Go ahead,
Colonel Nunser. I wanted to go back to your recent AI article. I think it was just recently during our AOC class that the Command and General Staff College allowed the use of AI, certain AI platforms, and had some parameters on it. I think the writing guide explained, very well how to use AI, and then also how to source it. I'll have to admit, our entire small group is kind of looked at each other like Admiral Akbar, thinking it was a trap. When you said that we need to start doing that, we were hesitant at first, as I know you know. It took us a minute to warm up to it. But was your article prompted on what you were seeing from the use of AI, or what you were thinking you were going to see coming out of students?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It was prompted really from all of that, really from what I was seeing from students, and then what we were trying to, what senior leadership here at the college is talking about, of ways to kind of change the curriculum and get after the use of AI. So that's really what prompted it. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's still this hesitancy because it's still seen as cheating by many, right? Especially when you're in an academic environment, PME environment. And so I will say, for the older instructors here, walking the halls of CGSC who are still talking about catching students using I think that's a 5 year ago conversation. I think that's not even worth trying to do anymore, catching a student, using AI. What we need to go into the mindset is, how can we use AI to better the education of these officers coming through CGSC? How can we come up with prompts that are going to help them in the during the MDMP process, or trying to build that OODA loop, any of those types of things? That's what we need to be looking at. So there's a science piece to it, which I talked about in the article, and I think I talked about to you guys in class as well. Is you can't just pump in stuff in there and then just whatever comes out you just use. You've got to apply the art to it behind it. So yeah, I think there's also what you had mentioned in just is that there's this slight restriction in the Army as well. We're using AI because there's still people who are in that group who are like, no, AI is cheating. We're not using it at all in anything, whether it's academia or within our formations. And then there's the other side of the group who's like, yes, we need to leverage it fully in everything that we do. And then there's kind of people in the middle. So in the Army, we are restricted to platforms, so Chat GPT, Vantage, things like that. And if you ever use those, they're very clunky, and they're not as effective as, say, Chat GPT on the civilian market, or Grok, whatever it's called. So we got a little restriction there. We want to use AI. We want to leverage it fully. We want to get it into our formations across all echelons to help us make decisions quicker, and more effectively and more accurately. But we're restricted to these kind of clunky platforms. So there's still, we're still working through the DoD is still working through all that at all levels to figure out. And plus, we got to keep it secure, right? It doesn't help if we use a civilian off-the-shelf model and then our enemy can tap into it and get information as we're typing it live. So yeah, there's still a lot of things that we've got to work through, but I'm definitely in the camp to the far right of, we got to figure out how to use leverage AI in our formations, and then also within PME, teaching our students how to effectively use it, so that when they get to their force, they're able to use it to its full potential.
Yeah, I agree, sir. I mean, you said leverage it. It's an enabler. Why would we inhibit an enabler that will make us collectively better? And I know Jared can, is the huge AI buff. We've got to feed the beast, right, Jared? So these clunky things that the Department of War is using, if we don't feed it, then it's not going to get any better, right? It's not going to learn from what we're saying, or even correcting it. Because I experienced, using those in our class, and it not being correct at all based on what I knew, but I could feed correction into it, and then that would, make it better for the next person that came to use it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And if you look at even the clunky tools that you have, the way that you feed data, Lieutenant Colonel, you talked about, reviewing all these different AARs and learning from the history of the past, right? Where you can take it, right? You can feed it and you say, hey, do some analysis on this. Show me some key themes. Show me this. And how do we take really way too much data we could ever as a human input with the amount of time you have, and then start segregating certain things and saying, oh, okay, hey, I see these key themes. And now you can take years and years and years of AARs and condense them down to where now, as a leader, I can ingest it much faster, especially with what's the problem sets that we're seeing and what might be coming up next. Did we get certain problem sets before others? So can we preemptively start fixing problems before we see them? And that's where, like Major Cox is talking about that, and then giving it those corrections. Hey, we fed it data. Yeah, it's a clunky model, but how we feed it, the prompts that we give it, and then correcting it when we're wrong, we'll see where these clunky models start streamlining, and then that machine learning in the background. Like I've taught my AI models, hey, write just like me. Look at my verbiage, even how I input into it. Start giving me that back in the prompts you give back to me.
Yeah, you can make your own persona. Yeah, excellent point, Sergeant. And I mean, there's so many things AI can do. I mean, if you're looking at field artillery, I mean, if you're looking at maybe a certain part on a gun that keeps breaking for whatever reason. And it's going to take a human. It's going to take a warrant officer, a maintenance NCO or whatever. It's going to take them, I don't know, a year to figure out, hey, this part keeps breaking on this gun. Whereas AI is going to be able to do it in a month. It's going to be able to say, hey, you had 10 parts go down on these 10 different guns. And then it's going to identify a problem. And then you can trace that all the way back to the industry base of what's happening with that part or why it keeps breaking down. So there's all kinds of just practical applications to get us to a solution much quicker than a human being could do. Yeah, good points.
Yeah. Hey, just an observation. What's the resistance to the integrating AI in the Army? I mean, I have my own thoughts, and I guess to kind of set the stage, I'd say, at certain transition points in the Army, and you've probably heard the previous Chief of Staff of the Army, McConville talk about General McConville talk about this, and we've carried it over a little bit with General George and some of the comments he makes about the Army in transformation. We're at this inflection point, right? If you look back 40 years, we were in inflection point at coming out of Vietnam, going into Desert Storm. They had some great, amazing technology. That's when we got our rockets, the MRS. That's when we got GPS, right? It was untested, unproven. If you go back 40 years before that, World War II, the interwar period between World War I and World War II, it was tanks, airplanes, and radars, right?
Mechanics,
And
yep.
look, think about how hard it was for them to get the Air Force to be the Air Force, right? And it's like this resistance to change. Is it just human nature that we're resistant to change, or is there more to it within the Army of like what we're concerned about?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think there's definitely a human nature cultural piece to it. Of the old diehard still kind of hanging. Really, I think at its core is this security piece. That's kind of what I think we're worried about with using these off the shelf models, is that there might be easy to hack into. They're sucked into this major cloud somewhere that we don't really know what they're doing with it. So putting top secret data into there is definitely a concern. So I think that's really what's driving I don't want to say the resistance to it. I think the slow roll of these AI platforms that work at a more efficient rate for us, that are secure.
Yeah.
I think that's really what's driving it, sir.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's a relevant point. I would also offer, and this is from personal experience, but I remember when we were developing when AFATAG was rolling out. Sorry, I've been around for a minute. So and there were a lot of guys that didn't want to give up the charts and darts.
Yeah.
And I guess what it amounts to is it's security in the sense of like what you're talking about, like we can't be compromised, infosec, but it's also security in that I feel safe using what I know, right? The technology is not proven enough, right? It's not robust enough. It's not mature enough to get me to the point where, hey, I have AFATADs. And so if you look at how the Army did business, they forced people to get rid of the charts and darts. They forced artillery units to get rid of charts and darts. They said, turn all that back in. You're using only AFATADs. They even changed level 1 training tasks, or like 13 Juliets, 13 Deltas back in the day. And they said, hey, you no longer have these training tasks. And then about 5 years ago, they said, you know what? We can't just rely on digital. Bring back the charts and darts. Bring back the analog. Bring back those tasks. And because there's room for both, right?
Yeah, I agree.
You got to have both. And so I know this audit. I think some of my friends writing roundtable have heard me talk about it. One can't necessarily replace the other. The new kids that are just on their phones and they're used to the digital and that's all they want, digital. They're digital natives.
Yep.
They don't want to have anything to do with paper. The old guys like me, Gen Xers. I mean, some of my soldiers call me a boomer. I'm not an effing boomer, right? We're not boomers here, all right? But like we're Gen X, but we like that paper touch. We like that paper touch, and so analog, digital. I think, in my mind, it's got to be both. And I think we both, it's generational what we how we internalize it. And so to your point, I think it is security. Yes. There's a security about it, like, hey, we're worried about that, but also it's like what makes us feel safe and confident to do our job.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think there's a third point too, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say there's a third point too, is that AI is very creation based, so it makes up stuff. Like I
Yes,
read in your
yeah.
article, your military, the ghosting thing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
did some legal research the other day for a project when I was like, okay, I need this by 11. I tried it and I went and checked the references, on LexisNexis. They were all just made up,
Yep.
just completely made up. And
Yep.
so I think there's a third component, like not to mention the two that you two gentlemen wrote or talked about, but that third is that, hey, it could be completely made up.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point.
But
I guess that's what Colonel Hildebrand said, is that it's not, tried and tested yet. And so, yeah, it makes up stuff all the time. And that's how we, catch students, is by their
Yeah.
by what they put in their references.
I mean, critical thinking is important too. It's extremely important that critical thinking skills are developed through PME or our experiences in the Army. So if we just go away from having to think about things and just rely on chat GPT or Camo GPT, then obviously it's a disservice to the Army as a whole. So like Colonel Hildebrand said, it's got to be there's room for both.
Yep.
If you're in a pinch, then and why not plug something into it to push start the car, if you will.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
No, I
If-
agree.
if
Yeah,
I
I think
could-
it's go ahead, sir.
I just want to make one kind of point. I try to emphasize this everywhere I go. Warfare occurs in three spheres: the mental, the moral, and the physical. And what I've seen overall, I think AI kind of gets into this. We all become hyper focused on the physical spheres. Physical spheres, things you touch, you count, but that's only 1/3 of warfare. You have the mental sphere. The mental sphere, that's where the will to fight is. That's where imagination resides. That's where logic is. People don't like to think about that or talk about will to fight because it's hard to grasp. It's hard to quantify. And then you get in the moral sphere. That's where confidence, that's human instinct. That's a realm of human instinct. That's a realm of confidence, fear, panic, assertion. And that sphere only emerges in warfare because panic, human instinct only happens when violence starts. You can't teach the moral sphere of war in a training environment because people aren't really scared to death, like NTC. No one's scared about burning to death. That's why everyone's brave in NTC. And so what I think one of the things I worry about with and I think it's going back to what I worry about with AI a little bit is it's because I think it's super useful. And not useful. I think I don't even know where it's going to go. It's so emergent.
Yep.
However, the one thing I think we as military professionals have to understand, everybody talks about AI. Everybody's there. It's cool. You can touch it. You can talk about it. That's not warfare. Warfare, there's a human element to it, right? There's the will to fight. You've seen that with the Ukrainians, Afghan. And I've heard generals talk about, how do you quantify the will to fight? The will to fight does not reside in AI. Human instinct, panic, fear does not reside in AI. And I think that, one of the things I think it's an interesting topic to write about is that we are so out of balance right now, focusing on the physical sphere of war. And I think that the cost is nobody's talking, writing, or focusing on building or strengthening our will to fight. How do we get after the human instinct piece of it? Because everyone's just hyper focused on stuff and AI. But that's my own pitch on that. But that's my worry on it.
No, that's a great point, sir. I think it's the science and art of war, and I think AI needs to complement and enable both of those. But I don't think it should replace it, in either sphere at all. So I think, really great points from everybody.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, I like that, right? You said complement and enable it, right? It goes back to what Colonel Hildebrand said in the very beginning, right? You keep that person in the loop on it. And if you look at some, right, you do this root cause analysis, why people are kind of so afraid of it, right? We say the boomers, the old timers. I think it's because they're afraid that they're going to lose that person on the loop. And the professions of writing goes really back to that, right? You have to have that person on the loop to write that military professional way, right? You get that emotion, you get that, hey, this is what was really going on. And, and training people, hey, this is where you use it the right way. Here's your right and left limits. And then this is how you keep that person in the loop that is still validating. So you don't get like Major Gagnon said, is these hallucinations, these made up things, and teaching them even how to talk to AI the right way. No different than as a senior NCO, how do I talk to a new private that just came in?
Yeah.
I had to
Great
learn that
point.
leadership skill and learn that. We have to learn and teach how to even talk to AI the right way, or else, right, it'll be like, these new age people and freak out on us and start hallucinating. It's interesting to see that kind of how it all ties back in together. It's, that personal loop, right? All these different dimensions. It's, for me, I love it, right? But I've spent a lot of time to learn how to utilize it. And there's some things I get, and I'm like, this is trash. I'm like, today you're not doing a good job today.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, no, great points. I asked AI the other day if it was trying to enslave humans and take over the world, and it said it wasn't. So I feel confident about dealing within that. But yeah, great
this is
point.
why I apologize to mine. I
It's
apologize.
too
I'm
smart
like,
to
thank you
tell us
so much
it's
for
real
the rest of
plan,
it.
sir.
I know, but I tried to trick it, but it said it wasn't going to do it. So,
Colonel
but
Naughton,
yeah.
is there any discussion about creating a block of instruction at BOLIC or
Yes.
at some echelon of PME on how to use AI?
Yeah, no, there's all kinds of discussions and working groups going on right now to get after what Sergeant Croce just said, is that, how do we teach officers and NCOs how to properly use that tool and the right prompts and the way to check it afterwards. So yeah, all kind of working groups going on all the time, trying to figure out how the best way to do it using the tools that we have. Again, this Vantage and Chat GPT and things like that. But yeah, so there's going to be some real changes, I think, in the next couple of years of how PME leverage teaches it, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well,
There's
cool.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, we are at the top of the hour, so we typically wind it down. This is like our lunch and learn type series. So as we kind of approach that mark, we give it back to the soldiers who were brown bagging it today and watching our series at lunch. So I'll tell you what, we close it down. We usually give our guests any final parting advice or comments, and then and then we just shut down the shop. So over to you, brother. What you got?
Yeah, no, I appreciate y'all having me on, sir. This is a really great conversation. Really enjoyed it. Anybody out there in the 36 ID or anybody really in the Army who's listening to this, if writing is something they want to do, something they want to learn more about, how to do it, tips, TTPs, etc., please reach out to me. I have a website. It's just patnaughton.com. So PATNAUGHTON.com. On there, it's got my personal email. It's got a link that you can link directly to me. And I'm happy, really happy to talk to aspiring writers about, ways to do it, how to navigate that landscape. Because I walked into a lot of bear traps that I would like to help others avoid through the publishing process. So really, motivated about that type of stuff. So please reach out to me anytime. And again, appreciate everybody having me on here. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining
Well
us.
done.
It's been awesome. Yeah, it was fun.
Good to see you again, sir.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah,
too, Matt. You're doing
yeah,
great out there. I'm proud of you, buddy.
yeah. Matt is incredible. We got to get him on camera more. He likes to. He's our editor in chief. So it's
Nice.
Yeah.
good that some people no showed us today on the writing roundtable. I say no show. They were committed to like operations otherwhere. So hey Matt, we got another episode coming up soon.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Okay.
I don't know when it is,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're gonna
It's
keep this
imminent.
going.
Yeah.
With the addition of Colonel Broyles, I
Yeah.
think we're gonna talk through and retool how we do this in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely excited for the next one. We'll get an invite out on Teams for everyone watching, so you know when it is.
And Matt, I
Perfect.
got an author suggestion for you. Reach out to me, and I'll send you his info. And if you guys are interested in him, he wrote a book as well. A really good. He planned the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and wrote a book
Oh,
about
cool.
it. So that might be really interesting for y'all.
Oh wow, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. Hey,
Mhm.
thanks everybody. You all have a great day. Enjoy your afternoon.